Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my final presentation. Thanks for taking the time to be with me today. So the first question is, does anyone recognize this music? What is it?
It sounds like Hail to the Chief.
It does sound like Hail to the Chief.
It sounds like it's from
It's
Disney
not.
World.
Yeah.
It sounds like it though, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like I'm at Disney World.
Okay.
Huh.
Any other guesses?
Yeah, there's a heavy Disney vibe.
Mm-hmm.
This is the music played at public events to introduce the person I'll be talking to you about today. This is the Pontifical Anthem, and it is played for Pope Francis. The other music that we'll be playing as we go through the presentation is the St. Matthew Passion, which is also a favorite of Pope Francis. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. I had it up so that you guys could hear it as we went through the introduction. According to a poll done by St. Leo University, Pope Francis had an approval rating of nearly 86% in November. I don't know about you, but I can't think of any other influential world leader that has an approval rating that high. That is completely independent. That's among Catholic adults. Among all adults, it's about 68%. So whether you're Catholic or not Catholic, the Pope has had an impact since 2013 when he was elected. Today I'm going to talk to you about the communication style and the importance of Pope Francis. He's quoted as saying, "I believe in God, not a Catholic God," in an interview. It's these types of statements that have made him such a popular figure, and he's had more attention since 2013 than most other leaders. And I've been a fan of Pope Francis since shortly after he was elected as the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church in 2013. So I used this assignment to get to know his communication style better and review a large number of his speeches and masses and written work. We're going to talk about his positive ethos, his presentations with confidence, and finally his communication style overall. The first thing you might be asking is, what is positive ethos? So positive ethos kind of goes along with the perceived character of the person making the presentation. So it is essentially, what does your audience think of you? Do they trust you? Do they believe what you're telling them? So obviously, I'm sure you can imagine that as the Pope, it's important to have people believe what you're telling them and be comfortable with your character. There's some key parts to ethos. The first is the outward presentation, outward manifestation of positive ethos, appropriately dressed, right? Obviously, the Pope has specific robes, and the word that comes to mind is costumes, but that's not the right word. But he has specific things to wear, right? Whether he's doing mass, whether he has a public speech, whether he's just out in public, which Pope Francis loves to be out in public. So he is always appropriately dressed. The second is he charismatic? So charismatic is defined as exercising a compelling charm that inspires the devotion of others. So there are about 1.2 billion people that identify as Catholic. And so if you compare that with an 85% approval rating, we could probably say he's pretty charismatic. And then also well prepared. Obviously, as the Pope, he's talking about something he's extremely familiar with most of the time. He was first ordained in 1969 as a Catholic priest, so he's pretty comfortable speaking publicly and being prepared with his topic. And then finally, expertise. He's the Pope, so we can kind of take it for granted got, you know, some expertise in the areas that he's talking about. The next thing that we look at with positive ethos is inner character. So, what can we say about the inner character of Pope Francis? We can start with actions speak louder than words, right? Pope Francis practices what he preaches. He is very dedicated to a humble, peaceful, merciful lifestyle. And there are so many examples of that have been published in different articles. The Time Magazine 2013 voted him as Person of the Year, and that was very shortly after he was elected, and it's full of examples of different things that he's done. Pope Francis is different, I think, in that he sincerely will say that he is a sinner and asks for prayer from the Catholic Church, from anyone willing to pray for him. He's very upfront about being just a regular person who happens to be the Pope. He's honorable, obviously. He sees the church as servants with a mission to help people, to heal people, and he's changing the focus of the Catholic Church from a doctrine-based belief system to an action-based belief system. Obviously, he's ethical. He's the Pope. But in addition to that, he refuses a lot of the fringe benefits that come with the Pope. He does not live in the papal apartments in the Vatican. He lives in the guest house because it's much more simple. It's where he's most comfortable. It keeps him closer to the people. There are so many stories of his humble demeanor. This is him in a prison, washing the feet of prisoners and their family, and he does not think that he is above anything. So communication actions. So obviously he's skilled at speaking, right? He's been doing it for a very long time. He's very comfortable in front of people. He does a good job presenting publicly. He's empathetic when he's listening. He likes to be with people. He seeks opportunities to hear from average people. He's not full of platitudes and things that just gloss over a person's suffering. He's always looking to be encouraging and to pray for people. As we know, he's often found in the crowds of people that have come to see him wanting to shake hands, wanting to hold and kiss babies, wanting to bless people. And then emotional intelligence. I mean, Pope Francis is probably one of the most empathetic people around. He doesn't shy away from difficult messages or difficult situations. He acknowledges the suffering and the pain that goes on in the world. So we move on to confident presentation. So obviously, one of the things in a confident presentation, know your audience. Know what they're looking to hear from you or what you can give them. And Pope Francis does not shy away from difficult topics. He always speaks on something timely. He's known for saying something surprising or different than you may have heard from popes or the Catholic Church in the past. His messages are normally around forgiveness and mercy, and he has not been deterred. He's not afraid to ruffle the traditional feathers of the Catholic Church, and he just keeps going. He also uses Twitter. So if you search Pope Francis, you will find him, and he does post little encouragement. He will ask for prayer on Twitter. He will, bring up world events, and so it's an interesting way for him to be reaching out to different generations and different people. He also meets with celebrities and CEOs. Pope Francis is not known for being particularly fond of capitalism. However, he has met with Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. He has met with Leonardo DiCaprio. He has met with countless other CEOs and celebrities, mostly to talk about different ways that they can be reaching out to their communities, supporting different charities. Leonardo DiCaprio actually gave the Pope money to go and from his charitable organization for the Catholic Church to use however they felt necessary. So it goes both ways. And then we're going to talk about the language barrier, right? So voice and speech patterns. So he adapts to the language barrier in a few different ways. One of the biggest is he will allow for a translator to catch up with him. I don't know about you, but sometimes when you watch speeches, people who speak a different language, they just keep going. And like the translation kind of has to catch up or like go over them. And it can be hard to make out what anyone is trying to say. And the Pope does a really good job of speaking slowly or leaving time for the translator to catch up so that his messages come across clear and there's no misrepresentation. In his 2015 visit to Congress, he spoke English. It was slow, and certainly he had an accent, but when he can speak in a common language, he does. So he does his best to overcome the language barriers. The Pope is not a great orator. When you think of like Martin Luther King, or you think of somebody who has a lot of cadence to their speeches and kind of rise and fall, and it's all fits together. And the Pope generally speaks in a pretty soft voice, but like I said, he has a very strong message when he's speaking, and it almost allows the listener to really dwell on what he's saying and not get so caught up in the presentation of the show. He is saying what he believes and what is dear to his heart, and so he does it in a way that you're just listening. And so finally we talk about persuasive appeals. So he persuades people to act, to change their thinking, and even when they don't want to. His use of logos, which is logic, he so often has had situations where he's like, how can I judge? I do all these other things. How can I say that this is wrong? Or, how could we ignore the amount of poverty that we have in this world? How can we keep pretending like everything's okay when we obviously have problems? And he uses facts and figures and statistics when he needs to, but most often he is able to get his point across by using personal stories, using emotion, which is pathos. So he is not afraid to shy away from getting Christians more involved. He calls on Christians constantly to be more Christ-like. We've already covered ethos. So then we have the Monroe's motivated sequence. So when you're doing a presentation, you want to cover these 5 steps. You want an attention getter, define the need, give a solution to the need, visualize the future, and call to action. The Pope definitely struggles a little bit with visualize the future, but he covers the rest of his areas in all of his speeches, especially the call to action. So today you've learned about the influential speaking skills of Pope Francis through his positive ethos, presentation confidence, and his persuasive skills. In conclusion, it's notable to remember that in the televised speech that he gave to Congress in 2015, he brought the House Speaker John Boehner to tears. And the Pope has an amazing effect on his followers with just his words. Thank you for your time.